What is the right balance between focus and diversification for mutual funds? This is the central question of my research set out to answer. Hi, my name is Sai Chandan Mandala. I'm going to present the key findings of my master's dissertation completed as part of MSc Finance program at Dublin City University. And my research topic is the impact of country and industry concentration on international mutual funds. So my research investigate whether concentrating on specific countries or specific industries lead to the better risk adjusted performance for actively managed international mutual funds. To be precise, I analyzed which form of specializations like geographic or sectoral has historically delivered the superior outcomes, whether there is an optimal concentration level, and how dynamic allocation strategies like country rotation impact the returns. In the next few minutes, I will go through the motivation behind my studies, from this motivation, how I designed my methodologies, from those methodologies and research questions, how I arrived to the certain kind of empirical analysis, and how I drawn the conclusion. So we'll go through the next slide. So, for our understanding, the focus of this dissertation, I have structured my research around four guiding questions. The first question is, why does mutual fund concentration matter in both practice and theory? The question explores the core debate in finance, whether diversification is always reduce risk or as whether specialization can sometimes will create the information advantage. And the second question is, does country versus industry concentration impact the risk adjusted performance differently? Here, I wanted to compare whether focusing on specific country or specific industry is more effective. And the next question is there any optimal level of concentration? This is one of the most important because in the moderate concentration might improve performance through specializations. Too much concentration can lead to the excessive idiosyncratic risk. And finally, how dynamic strategies such as country rotation impact the performance. This question looks whether actively shifting country allocation over time adds the static concentration strategies. So these questions share my methodologies. I use the data, I analyze the conclusion, and I drew. So the next slide we will go through is what is the motivation behind it. So the motivation of this research comes from long-standing debate in both academic finance and the practical fund management. So on the one hand, you can see the traditional diversification as proceed by modern portfolio theory. So the simple idea here, so the spreading the investment across the sector or across the countries will minimize the risk. For example, if one mutual fund has investing in 20 or 25 sectors, if another mutual fund investing in like 15 like let's take 5 to 10 sectors which have the minimum risk, so obviously the fund A will have the very minimal risk because it was spread across the 20 sectors. So whereas the other fund which have the fund B has sector have only the 5 to 10 sectors, so the maximization of the risk will be more. On the other hand, the most recent empirical studies have questioned whether diversification is always optimal. I don't think so. Some evidence suggests that concentrating on specific industries or countries can lead to the better risk adjusted. So on your right hand side, you can see this chart highlights how mutual fund assets have nearly doubled over the past decade, reaching over approximately $70 trillion globally. This scale is very huge. Even the minimum increment or improvement in the allocation strategies can have the significant economic impact. So this create the practical dilemma. Should fund manager focus on the portfolio, narrow their leverage, or they have to diversify their portfolio to reduce the risk? So here my research focus on these gaps systematically comparing these strategies. So next we will see what from these kind of methodologies, so what kind of hypothesis, what kind of research questions I developed. The first one I want to discuss is I wanted to understand whether country concentration and industry concentration impact the risk adjusted returns differently. This is important to my research. Why? Because the prior studies often look them separately without comparing their effective relativeness. Whereas the second question I explore whether there is a non-linear relationship. What does it mean? Some concentration might be beneficial. Excessive concentration could lead to the diminishing returns, or it can be vice versa, increase the risk. So the next question I examined is whether dynamic strategy specific country rotation intensity, where manager actively reallocate the assets to the countries. This means provide additional performance benefits beyond the static concentration. And finally, I consider how fund specific characters like size of the fund or as the expense ratio of the fund or the fees of the fund or as the macroeconomic factors like regulatory quality and institutional decisions interact with the concentration. So these questions shape me to design the empirical analysis for my dissertation and for my research. So next Next, we'll see how I implemented the methodologies here. So this slide mainly summarizes the methodologies I used, specifically used in my research. First, I developed two new weighted concentration measures. Here, as we know, here I have taken the country and the industry concentration risk. Unlike traditional simple ratios, I normalize the market capitalization, which better reflects the economic significance of each country and this sector or industry in a portfolio. So the next, I sorted out the funds into quantile based on this concentration level to observe how risk adjusted performance changes across low to high concentration categories. The next, uh, to formally test this relationship, so I conducted the panel data regression analysis. So this allowed me to examine not just linear effect, but also non-linear dynamics, and also control the importance of the fund characters as already discussed in my research question of fourth research question. So few characters I had considered like size, expense ratios, the turnover, and the age, and etc. Finally, performance was measured using the Sharpe ratio and the alpha. So here we can see the next slide. I'm going to explain all the key findings. So in this slide, I will show the average alpha across the most diversified and the most concentrated quantiles for country and industry concentration. Here you can see country concentration produced negative alpha in both diversified and highly concentrated portfolio. Whereas in contrast, the industry portfolio achieved positive 2.57 sector specialization can generate superior returns. So these results provide clearly evidence that industry focused concentration strategies are more effective compared to the country focused approach. And the next figure, you can see, I want to test about the non-linearity relationship between the industry concentration and performance measured by using the alpha across the different quantiles. Uh, you had seen in the previous picture the how quantiles from the quantile 1 to quantile 5 I had taken. So in this non-linearity, what I can see is here the clear improvement in the performance peaking in the third quantile at about positive 1.5 percentage. So this suggests some level of specialization helps in managers captures the informational advantage. So here you can see overall this inverted U-shaped pattern supports the idea that moderate industry concentration is optimal for achieving risk-adjusted returns. Yes, as all relationships were tested in multiple regression with controls, the results were robust and coefficient were statistically significant. All the tables are available in my dissertation report for the better understanding to I elaborated in that. In the next, we will go to the synthesis and implications of my research. To summarize, these findings moderate industry concentration can help managers to achieve superior risk-adjusted returns, while excessive concentration introduce the higher risk. For example, for investors, this means the fund with sector specialization rather than the purely geographical focus may offer better results. So, based on my key findings of those two graphs and two charts, you can see there. So, as an investor, as a retail investor, or as a fund manager, I can see that from my research results, the sector specialization is giving much more importance rather than directly concentrating or focusing on the geographical region. So finally, my research contributes the importance of the nonlinear effect in concentration strategies and providing the empirical evidence in the fund allocation portfolio or decisions. And what about the limitations? So what about the limitations I took in my research and what are the future research I can extend? So the estimation of the alpha is sensitive benchmark choice here. So different indices, different factor models could yield different alpha estimates, whereas the concentration index rely on annual holdings. This means dynamic changing within the year. Like if fund has suddenly shifted and fund manager has allocated different regions and elaborated into different countries or different sectors, so you can see the results within the particular year, it will go in an upward direction. So these concentration induction rely on annual holdings, particularly mainly. So finally, the future research, I could expand the framework by including the ETFs, ESG focused funds, or applying some machine learning methods. So here I applied panel data regression, but in future I might apply or I can apply the machine learning methodologies to detect the non-linearity, mainly to focus on the non-linearity complex interactions. So these extensions would deepen our understanding of when and how concentration strategies deliver the superior performance. So finally, the closing and the key takeaways from my research is, so I want to briefly recap the main key points from my research. The first one is industry concentration consistently outperform country concentration. The second one is the relationship is non-linear. And finally, these findings suggest that fund manager and investors should consider carefully sector specialization strategies rather than focusing on the geographical or country is significance or diversification throughout in the country only. So here my conclusion I draw is that concentrating on the industry or sector specialization strategies are much more important than the country or region or geographical specialization or specification on the investing of the portfolios. And thank you for this great opportunity.